Alright, thanks for tuning in. Today we have a video that is about the Smokin Joe II amp that I intended to build, and the pictures I'm showing you are of my completed amp. We're going to sit down and build the amp together, kind of. If I would have showed you all the real-time stuff, this video would have been days long, so I do take you step by step through the thought process, some of the little things I had to change to get it done. But essentially, the amp went together and worked right out of the gate. So I took my time. I triple-checked every friggin' connection in the whole thing, and we got a live amp right out of the gate. So super. It sounds really cool, and it's a lot of fun. So join me on this journey of assembling a Weber amp kit Smokin Joe II. So it's all done. The only thing left to do is to clean the tone pot, put a little bit of cleaner lubricant in there, and to put my name on it, and we'll do that in another video. Alright, here we go. You might want to watch this over a couple of days. It's long. Okay, kids. Here's our box. This should be our amplifier kit. It's a pretty big box for what's supposed to be in there. But I'm going to have to take some inventory of some things here. Make sure we got all the pieces, parts. We could always forgive say a missing resistor or a missing capacitor if it's in a smaller value or something we've got laying around. But if there's ever a boo-boo on these, you can always tell them and they'll fix it. So here's our invoice and our parts list. So we'll be going through that. And they sent me some logos to put on my amp when I'm done. We're going to use that, but in a different way, I think. Okay, so this is a chassis, and it's got a lot of stuff in it. Let's see. Yes, it's a chassis and it has a lot of parts in it. So we're going to put that over here on the bench so we can inventory those parts. We have a hefty transformer, probably the power transformer. Good grief, I should have brought a knife. That would be the power transformer, so hooray. And let's see what else we have. Paper, styrofoam peanuts. And this appears to be our amp cabinet, probably with the speaker inside, and hopefully some other pieces, parts too. We don't know what was all stashed in that. We don't know what was stashed in the amp cab or amp chassis part. Okay, we're going to hang on to all this styrofoam for the next shipments and things. There. I don't feel anything else, so we'll deal with that. Okay, so here's our amp cabinet, complete with silver bell type speaker. Hooray! And so let's go inventory the rest of the parts. Okay, so we got a bag with wires. They gave me 3 colors, and there's a lot of nuts and bolts. This is the output transformer, and it's nut and bolt popped out, so I'll just put that back now so I have it. So the hardware type stuff is in the one bag. Here there's a power cord. So I got output transformer there. I got the power transformer there. And I'll get this out of the way because this doesn't have anything to do with what we're working on today. Okay, there's our board to solder on. Okay, I'm going to have to look at that and see how that shakes out versus our diagram. And then we have our cabinet here. Sometimes they give you a brass plate. It doesn't look like they gave us a brass plate today, which is okay. Like I say, some amps they do, some amps they don't. And it looks like this cabinet, this is revised because the original layout showed the tubes all at the bottom or in a 4-square pattern on there, and these are not that way. So not in a 4-square pattern. And I don't have a brass plate for the grounding scheme, so I'll come up with something. There's a couple ways to do a grounding scheme, and it shouldn't be too hard. So we'll go over that. If this was a Fender style amp, it would probably have a brass plate, but it doesn't. Okay, let's go through this real quick and sort out the big pieces. We have, here's some thicker wire. This is the speaker wire, and this is the thinner wire. This is the, wire, the insides of your amp wire. And I like that they gave me 3 colors, because they could have not given me 3 colors. The standoffs are a smidge of a surprise because they still threw them in the bin, but I don't know why they would need to throw them in the bin now because of the other thing, but it probably makes sense for the length of the wires, because if the tubes are under here, okay. And we got some nuts and bolts and a fuse and some standoffs there. Some of this stuff you're kind of left to figure out on your own. Got a preamp tube socket. We got another preamp tube socket. We got 2 retainers for the power tubes. The EL84 is 2 retainers for those. And then there, here. And we got a couple more retainer rings, which I guess that's if you're not using the strain reliefs, because I don't see that I would need those necessarily. And then we've got these 2 big bolts. I think that's probably to hold the chassis into the cabinet together. And then we got our pots. So I'll set those down there. And let's look at, this is our pots and our switch, right? So I got, that's a double pot, that's like a master volume. And then one of these will be a volume, and the other one's going to be the on-off and the tone. Okay, yeah, we're looking good so far. And then we should have, okay, there's a light bulb. A little light bulb. And cord strain relief. It's good. And grommet. Hopefully there's more than one of those in there. Fuse holder. RCA plug. RCA jack, so that's how they want you to hook the speaker up. And then 1/4 inch switching jack, which is for your guitar. And then there's another grommet and a wire nut. So that seems okay. Alright. So good there. I'll put that stuff back in here. I know this is really exciting inventorying things, right? So the only other stuff that we could potentially be AWOL with is maybe a resistor or a capacitor or something like that. And it looks like we're in okay shape. See, I've got 3 big capacitors here. Yeah, I got the 3 big ones. Where's the 50 mic though? There says there's one that's a 50 mic, but the 50 mic might be a smaller one. Like a low voltage. Because when they draw the pictures, they're not necessarily to scale. That's 50 mic, yeah, it's a little one. Okay. So we look like we're in good shape, so we can probably just start doing some things here. So the first thing I like to do is just put the grommets in the chassis here. Put those on. And we're going to bolt the transformers on. So we're going to follow the general layout that is in the picture. You can download this picture at the Weber Amps website. It's under technical, under this model amp, and you can follow along with me, and we can work together on this. So what I see here is the output transformer is supposed to go here, and the power transformer is going to go in the hole. And I see we got a hole here. I don't know what that's for. I'm not sure how they expect us to mount this board on the chassis. That's kind of a question. We might have to do a drill hole or something for that. I'm not certain yet. We'll figure it out. But the output transformers, let's see, the speaker out's going to be over here, right? Because power and fuse are going to be over here. Wait, no, this is pots and stuff, right? Yeah. So light, master, tone, on, off, and input. And then the speaker out will be under here. Okay, so if the speaker out's under here, that's all well and good. So that means when we put the output transformer on here, I should put the output leads on this side. So let's look at this and see what we have. The output leads that go to the speaker are the green and the black one. So the green and the black one, yeah, again, this kind of doesn't agree entirely with the picture. So these 3 go to the power supply and to the output tubes, and then these 2 have to come back and go to the speaker inside. So when we put this on the back like this, we're going to feed these through the holes. I don't even know if this is in a good camera shot. Yeah, I guess it's good enough. I forgot to welcome everybody here. I just kind of want to get to work. I've had a lot of things lately in the world that have given me the blues, so making a thing can cheer me up if it works. If it doesn't work, then you just get the blues worse, I guess. I don't know. So Okay, so yeah, the bolt holes line up good, so that's cool, and the wires are going through okay. So what I'll do is I'll just screw this on here, put the nut and bolt on there. I don't think we need to watch that. The power transformer is on there, and it's tightened down, and I've got the wires going into the directions that I want them to go, because the speaker out's going to be over here. So the green and black, which is out to speaker, are over there. So that's good. Okay, so let's put the power transformer on. That's right here. And to get this one to go on good, it kind of helps if you have a nut driver. So I should have something that'll work on my socket set. And this one, it kind of doesn't matter. It's going to go this way, and it doesn't really matter if it goes this way or that way. It isn't going to matter, because it's going to be tipped the opposite way of the transformer. And then we have the little lock nut, so don't lose that. So we're going to take the 4 nuts off, put this in this hole, and tighten it down. But before I do tighten it down, I'm going to put one of these on all the accessible corners, so I have something to solder to. It just makes a nice easy grounding point. Okay, I got the power transformer on, and I put the solder tabs on the corners of the 3 bolts that are here. Now I've taken the output transformer back off, and I'll explain why. What I figured out while I was fiddling around here, these are the bolts to put the output transformer back on, so we'll put those there so we don't mix them up. They give you these standoffs to hold the board in place, and this hole that ends up located underneath the power transformer or output transformer, it's a little too small for the hole that they gave you. Actually, it's not this. It's one of I think I got a screw mixed up, but it's a little on the small side, and so you need to open that up a little bit more. And then the second hole for the other screw, yeah, it's this one, because this is the other hole for the other screw for the other standoff isn't there. It's not here. So I had to go get the drill, and we're going to open up. First, we're going to open up this hole a little bit, the one that's under the output transformer. We're going to open that up a little bit with just our drill bit, and then we're going to screw down the fiber board to it, which is going to go in like that. We're going to screw the fiber board in down, and then use that as a marker to put the second hole. Okay, so I'm going to mount this. I'm going to open this hole, put the divider on, and then make the second hole there. And then I can put the other standoff in, and then it'll be ready. If I try to do that later, it's going to be a mess, because this is going to be covered in components, and I don't want that. Okay, so just to reiterate, this is the standoff, and it goes between this fiber board and the chassis, and the one screw is here, and then the plastic thing right now is under the board, and then the other screw is here holding this part down. And this board pretty much rides real close to the front of the amp chassis, and it snugs right up to the side here. So that's fine. I just have to be aware to make sure I don't have any components hanging off the ledge. And then this is going to be my hole for the other standoff. So I'm going to drill that after I turn the camera off. Okay, so I've mounted my standoffs in there now. There's those two, and those will fit the board just like that, which is upside down from the picture, but you'll see how it fits together. But by doing that before, now I won't have to wrestle with it later. This is still going to be a tight fit, and there's going to be a lot of working stuff. Now I'm going to reapply my output transformer, and then we'll probably put the tube sockets on. But I want to try to put as much on the chassis. I kind of put the chassis together, and then I put the board together, and then we join the two together. So let me put the output transformer back on. So in reapplying the output transformer, the screw that holds the standoff would have made the output transformer kip over at an angle, and I didn't like that, so I took a couple of little washers and made a spacer to make clearance for the screw head that you might be able to see in the gap. It's right over there, and that's for the standoff that sits right there. So I did that, and I'm going to save putting the pots in till later. Let's do the tube sockets. So for the tube sockets, we should have nuts and bolts with this, right? Yeah, we have nuts and bolts, and there's my knobs. Put the knobs over here. And then I got a fuse over here too. Okay, so nuts and bolts for this, and I like the idea of using the tube retainers, so I'm going to for these, and then the preamp tubes. Now, what I'm looking at here is when they draw the diagram, you know, they do it around that way. So when I'm looking at it, I want to try to line up the tube socket, my view, with what I see on the diagram. It's totally not mandatory to do that, but if I do that, I'm less likely to make an error. So that's what I'm going to do. On these, the screw head part, I think has to go on the outside, because there's no room for it on the inside. So you follow up and put the nut on the inside. And we're going to put the shielded ones for valve 1 and valve 2. The preamp ones are going to go here, and then the power amp ones are going to go over here. Okay, so for the power tube sockets on these two are separate, and they don't actually interlock with each other. You just press them together, and that fits inside of there. And then when you press it up against here and screw it down, this ring pins the ceramic socket down to the chassis, so it's insulated. So they're pretty straightforward, but you know, when they come in two pieces, I suppose if you've never seen it before, you might not know what you're looking at. Okay, so tube sockets are in. That's good. Now, I do not want to put anything in here that's going to obstruct my ability to get the board in, because if I put this stuff up here, then I got stuff back here, I'm not going to get the board in. But the light over here and the fuse holder and the speaker jack, I will have room to put in. So I'm going to do that. Now I just have to figure out where they went. Okay, they went up here. So I hope this makes a little sense to you all. Okay, so fuse holder is gonna go, they put it, well, there's two holes. It can go in one of the two holes, and it doesn't fit in that one, and it doesn't really fit in either one, actually. I guess it kind of fits in this one. So if it goes down here, it hits a power transformer, so that's no good. So it's not going in that one, it's going in this one. So this one, this is just a typical nut here. It's on plastic, so we'll spin that in, and then we'll put like a crescent wrench or something on it and snug it up good. I don't want to crank the sin out of this one because it's plastic. I'm going to make sure that goes all the way in. Remember, you do this work like you want it to be art, because someday 40 years from now, some poor amp tech is going to be saddled with diagnosing that amp you built 40 years ago and having to troubleshoot it. And if it looks like it was built by, you know, animals, they're not going to be happy. Okay, so I'm going to snug that, and then I'll do the Okay, so I just made an executive decision here. I'm going to modify the original design of the amp. Not much. Okay, so the speaker jack they were having you use is the RCA, and they gave you the RCA male plug to go with it. And you would normally put it through this hole right there, which is kind of wobbly, and you'd probably have to drill some little pinholes to put that in. However, it fits a 1/4 inch nicely, and I have a 1/4 inch speaker jack, and everything uses 1/4 inch speaker jacks anyway. So my executive decision is to use a 1/4 inch speaker jack rather than the included RCA, but I don't think that really affects the overall integrity of it. The next thing we've got to do is I do have to get the power cord in, and that's where we're going to start monkeying with the power transformer and its wires a little bit. And there's a lot of wires on there, and we're not going to use nearly as many as there are. We have four wires on there that aren't connected to anything, and actually one more because there's going to be a 120 volt line, the blue one. So we have 5 wires on this that aren't going to be connected to anything. So what we'll probably do is we're going to shorten those and shrink wrap them, and the rest of the wires are going to be shortened a lot from what they are, because they don't need to be that long. So the other thing that is kind of annoying, and it'll throw a rookie off, which it kind of throws me for a loop for a minute. This is the power cord they give you. We're used to green as ground, white as common, and black as hot. In this case, brown is hot, blue is common, and yellow with green stripe is earth. So we'll just remember that as we install our power cord in here. Okay, so remember how I had put those tabs on the corners of the power transformer? Well, I soldered the earth from the power plug right to it, and it's big enough you can kind of work through the hole. And then we can put these other 2 wires through and connect them to the appropriate points. The hot wire, which is the brown one, is going to go to the fuse. So the hot wire is going to the fuse. The green wire, which would be the ground, they just show that going to ground point, which is the chassis. And then the neutral wire is going to go to one of the black transformer leads, which are the primaries. The other one's going to go up to this switch. So we're going to have one long lead and one short lead. We'll do this and then we'll review it. So you probably need a flashlight and a magnifying glass or something to see this well. From our power cord, the brown wire is going to the end of the fuse holder. The blue wire is tied to the black lead on the transformer. They're soldered, and then the plastic cap is placed on them for insulation. And then the yellow-green stripe is soldered down in the corner to the lug on the power transformer bolt. Now we can put the strain relief insert thing in. So let's look on our diagram. We're going to be using a brown wire. We're going to be using a green with a yellow stripe, 2 solid greens, and 2 red with white stripes. Yellows will not be connected to anything, and reds will not be connected to anything, and there's a blue with a red stripe that I don't see listed on there at all, but it's probably not going to be connected to anything. So we have all of these long wires that aren't going to be connected to anything, so we're going to cut them shorter, because obviously if we leave them floating in the amp, that's going to cause problems. We're going to cut them relatively shorter, put some shrink wrap on them so they can't contact anything, and then zip tie them off in the corner. Okay, so with those neatly out of the way, let's put the pilot light in. You just put it in and put the nut and the lock washer behind it. Okay, alright, so the pilot light's in, and it's like got really tiny points on it to solder to. I tried to bend them out to make them easier to reach. That really didn't help much. So, and on top of that, I got a jillion wires coming off of this. So, to save some real estate and make this easier, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Since I have the output transformer lead that comes back in here, I'm going to solder it to my output jack over here that I put in, which would be your RCA if you wish to use it. The black is going to go to the outside, which is also going to be grounded because of the type of jack it is, and then that'll go to the tip. So black to ring, green to tip, and then I can cut these wires nice and short and tuck them down, and then they won't be in my way. Okay, so that makes me happier. So now the transformers output leads to the speaker jack aren't flopping around. Now I have a little bit more room to work. We're going to have to do the filament wiring, which is going to get a little tedious. And because it's a lower voltage at 6 volts, you usually use a little bit heavier gauge wire. And I don't see that any of this is any heavier than anything else. These are all kind of the same gauge. EL84s don't really draw that much current, nor do 12AX7s. So this stuff is probably just fine. But I think for my own purposes, I'm going to use some of the wire I've got on hand. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go from pins 9 and 5 and 4. So 5 and 4 have to be connected together. 9 and 5, 4 to 9 and 5, 4 to 5 and 4 to 5 and 4. And we need to try and tightly twist the wires neatly between these. So I think I'll do it, and then we'll take come back and we'll take a look at what I did. And then from the 5 and 4 here, I will need to actually go up to the pilot light up there. See, they have the green coming out of the transformer to the pilot light, and then to all filaments, which is 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 9, 5, 4, 9. Okay, let's admire our handiwork. Now, this light has such tiny connectors. It's very, very difficult. So I got creative and soldered wires to wires, and then wires to connector, and then put some shrink wrap over it. The green wires coming out of the transformer are the 6-volt winding. That needs to power the light, and then I have it coming into this pair of conductors, which is then traveling down to 5-4 on this tube, to 5-4 on this tube, to 5-4-9 on this tube, to 5-4-9 on this tube. This is a tedious process. Getting everything twisted is a lot easier in a big giant Fender amp or something big. This is small. This is tight. As you see, these wires are not drawn on the diagram. They just put FIL next to where the filaments are. But, so, there they are. That's the best I think I could do. And I'm sure somebody's going to tell me their story in the comments section about how Uncle Marty was so much better at this than I am. And, well, Uncle Marty can just stick it in his ear right now. That was a lot of frustrating work. But now we're ready to move on. Since we've got the filaments wired up, and again, I would have loved to have those green wires going the other direction, but we'll change that if we deem it necessary. We do have enough wire and room to do that. So, as shown in our diagram, green, yellow, and red, yellow, which is red with yellow stripe. These two wires right here, it's kind of dark green and yellow, and red with yellow stripe. They've been connected to our ground lug terminal down there, so they are on earth, like the diagram says. So our filament structure is completed. At this point, it's probably a good time to start playing around with our circuit board. After just a few more things, I'd like to get the couple of transformer leads from the output transformer soldered on, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so based on our diagram up there, we've taken the brown lead of the output transformer and soldered it to pin 7 of valve 4, and the blue lead from the output transformer and soldered that to pin 7 of valve 3. I think I'm going to do some more soldering here around the valves. There's a few resistors and a few jumps that need to be put in place, and I think we'll do that right now. Okay, so we're taking a look at valve 1. We have pin 1 connected to pin 7 and a 1K resistor connecting pin 1 to pin 8, and then pin 8 going up to the board. So that part I've done so far. So let's look. 7 to 1 and the 1K resistor to 8 and a lead that goes up to the board. Well, of course we don't have a board yet, but we do have it. Our 1K resistor is going from pin 1, or from 1 to 8, and this is actually, this jumper from going from 1 to 7 is actually the lead part of the resistor itself. I just slipped some insulation over. You can just rip some insulation off of your wire and slip it over these, and that kind of works. And then this wire is the wire that's going to go up to the board. This solid core wire can be kind of fragile, so you really want to make sure you don't bend it directly at the pins. You kind of want to be real gentle with it. Next, we're going to go over to that over there. We got some sockets and things and stuff to put on those over there. I'm trying to, get... I'm not going to have all the wires on these, because if I can get to them, I'm just going to get to them. But as far as getting the resistors and the components on here and soldering the tubes together from point 1 to A to B or whatever, we're going to try to do a little bit more of that, and then we'll construct the board. My grandfather clock reminded me that it is time to check my email and go to bed, and the camera's reminding me it's time to charge the battery and unload our footage. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Okay, so we're back on day 2, and I've done a few of the things here on the socket. The 12 AX7 valve 1, we have a 1.5, well no, I showed you this yesterday, sorry, I'm rehashing, I forgot. So we haven't done anything to this tube yet, but over here we have a 470 ohm resistor from pin 1 to pin 8, and then there's a lead that's going to end up going all the way up under the board. to that. No, wait, I got it backwards. Hold on. The 470 goes from pin 1 to pin 9, excuse me. And then pin 9 also goes over to pin 9 on the other tube. So we have constructed that. That's the fatter resistor from pin 1 to pin 9 with the yellow lead connecting the 9. And then we have the 1.5K resistors from pin 2 to pin 8. And those are the long ones. They're going to end up going underneath to the top of the board there to meet the 270K resistors to go up to master volume. So I have not soldered the pin 8 side of those resistors yet, but it is soldered on the pin 2 side, so they're in position at any rate. So I suppose at this point I'm going to start constructing the board, and we'll go from there. Here's our eyelet board, which is almost actual size, if you will, from over here. So I'm going to start with the diodes, and we're just going to start working our way across. There's a few things I'm going to not do, like I'm going to just very, very lightly solder this tip here. I'm not going to actually fill the hole, because if I fill the hole then I won't be able to put the wire back in, but we can fill the holes between those diodes. Try to make this as artistic and neat looking as possible. Here's our 4 diodes, and each diode will go from point to point here. So I'm going to start in this corner, and technically I could just slog these down the holes and they would be just fine, but I kind of prefer to just try to put neat bends in them and make them look really extra nice, and also to sort of create a mechanical connection for this to the board. So being cognizant of our polarity, we'll look here, basically all the diodes must point to the center. So we'll wrap them around here, and I'm going to wrap them around for the moment. We do have a good use for the extra leads. You'll see how that works momentarily. The other thing we want to be cognizant of, especially while we were working on those tube sockets, whenever you're wiring point to point, you want to be as absolutely certain as possible that your connection is connecting to what you wanted it to, and nothing more than what you wanted it to. The biggest goof in point to point is, you know, one of these bare leads laying onto something where it's not supposed to be, and that can cause a short circuit. It's a good idea to try to use any leftover slack or any leftover insulation from previous wires that you've stripped. You can slip them over components to go to, you know, certain locations, and that will help. So here's that. Now next we have the 91 ohm 10 watt resistor, and we are supposed to space that resistor off the board because it gets hot, and this lead also goes to the center point there. So let's find that resistor, which it should be mighty big. Let's see here. Okay, there's a big 10 watt resistor that's going to go here, and it needs to be spaced off the board. So let's just be creative in the way that we bend the leads so that it will sit off the board. If we do something like this, where we bend the leads in this kind of fashion, and then we can turn them downward and solder them into the respective hole, and the resistor will be sitting up off the board enough for the cooling. So I think that's what we're going to go with here. So I'll get that done and then we'll come right back. Okay, well, I've made some progress. The 4 diodes are in. These 2 holes, which have all their connections completed, have been filled completely with solder. The 2 on the end, which will be receiving the wires from the transformer, these have been tacked in place, but it's not fully flowed. And we have a line that we have to run from the center of these 2 diodes to this resistor. Now by default, I would love to take these leads and just J-hook them and solder it, because there's going to be a backer board for here, you know, to prevent short circuiting. But that's not going to be an option. So I'm going to have to run a wire from those 2 points, from there to the top of the resistor. So we'll do that. Okay, so our 4 diodes and our resistor are together. These 2 transformer leads will be attached here and there, which these diodes are tack soldered at the end, but it'll be coming. The 91 ohm 10 watt resistor is lifted off the board by the way that the leads are bent, and it is tack soldered down here because there'll be more coming for it, and then it is full flow soldered here with a connection coming back to the middle of the 4 diodes, as seen with our little piece of wire. So that's good there. Next we're going to proceed to install. I have 2 40 microfarad caps, and these should be high voltage caps. They should be in the kit here. They should be the big boys. I think there's actually three big 40 microfarad caps. So there they are. 40 microfarad at 500 volts. The transformer's AC winding prior to going through its resistor and dropping network and everything is actually 600 volts, so it's a beast. On our diagram, we want to carefully observe the polarity. The plus signs are going to the bottom of the board. So there's our arrow with our minus pointing to go that way, and our dimple here indicates the plus. So these 3 will be going down here. Now, my other concern, the screw for the standoff will go here. Now that standoff is insulated, it's plastic, it's not conductive. So I'm not too worried about that, but I need to make sure that I leave enough room when I mount this capacitor to be able to get to that screw. And in addition, you can see there are some connections beneath here. Some are marked as beneath, some are marked as over the top. It really probably doesn't matter as long as they exist. So we have a 2.2K, a 10K, but connecting these 2 and these 2, if I can, I'll just use the leads off the capacitors. Okay, so we're making progress. We've got the big caps down here. The under connections that need to be in place are there. This is all according to the diagram. We do still have to put some resistors here, and we have a connection under here. The under connection's there. We have a resistor, it's going to go up there, and the under connection here is there. Here's my challenge. I don't really want to roast my capacitors. So I was able to scoot that big warm resistor over a little bit, so it's hovering a bit more atop the diodes, but it's still not touching anything. Now we come to here where we have both a small capacitor, which is small, so that's going to like duck right under and hide underneath those. That's not a problem. But then we got this big puppy here, and I have to try to keep this from roasting everything else. So I think I can kind of float it above everything else. And then I've got to put some other caps down the row. So we're going to try to do that now. Just a little side note, if we look here, we have a 130 ohm 10 watt resistor. Shipped in the kit is a 135 ohm, which is, you know, close enough. 15 watt resistor. So being a 15 watt resistor, it's going to be physically a little bigger. The bigger part is a bit of a drag because of these space requirements. Alright, so we've made some more progress. Before we had done we've done from here over, with the exception of the resistors. I'm still going to get to that. When we got to here, this 50 microfarad cap, we saw how tiny it was, and then it's tucked right under the 40. This big resistor is kind of on top of them, and it actually is riding right over the top of the 0.1 microfarad. So if we look at what we have here, the little 50 mic is way back under there. It's hard to see. And there's our 0.1, and then we have 0.22 and 0.22. So this board is really packed in like rats, but that's okay. And I'm going to place the other capacitors down the row here, and then we'll start sticking resistors in. And I've tried to make a few of the connections, like you got to look real careful through here. There's you know, the join from the 0.1 here over to the big resistor, and 0.05, and there's a join from the 40 mic over here, so all this is like tied together. So it's just a matter of making sure we get all of those joins together. I've been doing them under the board here. These, they're still going to get clipped, but these joins, just like that one, you know, we're making the joins under the board. So as we go, we just keep checking our work and checking our work and checking our work against our diagram. Okay, so I'm populating the caps down here at this end, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to do the resistors. But populating the caps down at this end, we bumped into one little dilemma. See that 1.5K resistor that goes along in the same holes as this cap? The leads really aren't, they're just like almost barely able to go there, and I really got to stay within the dimensions of the board, so I'll show you how I handle that. Okay, so that's how I handle a resistor and a capacitor that are on the same leg and there might not be enough real estate. I just wind one around the other and put a little solder on it. So that'll work. I'm sure the comment section is going to fill up with somebody who's, you know, Uncle Marty who works at NASA would never do that because something, but whatever, that's how we're doing it, and it should work. So now we're going to just keep populating resistors. Now, just to make sure that y'all don't think I'm like uber smart here, because I'm not. Some of these capacitor values are tricky. Like the big boys are easy. They're marked 40 microfarad, 50 microfarad. This one's marked 0.033. That's easy. Some of these other ones are like 473J. Well, 473J, there's only essentially one of them, and it's 0.047. So 47 is the value, and then 3 is where the decimal point goes. And that's kind of the easy way to do it. If you're, and, you know, like I say, if this is your first kit and that throws you, by all means just put that value in there. And then the letter J is the voltage, actually. It's like a voltage rating. So 473J probably means the 630 volt or whatever it is. Yeah, so we got them all figured out, and I think we're doing pretty good. So I'm going to start populating some resistors on this board. Now this stuff is soldered, but it's just tacked because there's going to need to be wires put in there, and if there's going to need to be wires in there, I'm going to have these holes open. There's also going to be, like around this area, there's probably going to be some more bridges, and over here with these resistors there's going to be more bridges under the board. So we're going to try to carefully construct all of those, again based on our diagram here. Okay, so 4 resistors down, 2.2K. This is going to be a high wattage resistor, so it'll be fat and kind of big. 10K, again fat and big. 270K, 270K. And so again, once one of these eyelets has everything that it needs in it and nothing more will go in it, I fill it with solder. Otherwise we're just tacking as we go along. This 270 kind of looks like it's laying on top of there, but it's not touching. It's actually lifted a little bit, so it's not touching. And those power resistors down here, these are a little beefy because they have to handle more wattage. They're part of the power supply circuit. So now we got a bunch of resistors over here. We're going to work on those. Okay, so I caught my first mistake. In the power supply section, these are the high, probably 2 or 3 watt resistors. And this one was labeled as a 2.2K. Well, again, earlier I saw red and said, oh, 2222. Okay, there we go. That's got to be it. And measured it rightly quick and stuck it in there. Well, this is actually the 22K for farther down the line over here. It appears that for the big power resistor they substituted a 2.7K, which is going to drop the voltage a little bit, but it's close enough that'll work fine. The 22K here, the leads are too dang short now, so I can either do a little, doctoring surgery on it, or I can just go get one out of the bin, and I have one in the bin. Okay, so I've got the rest of the resistors on here, and for anything that has, that we have everything that goes to the hole, the solder's been filled up, and for anything that doesn't, it's tack soldered where there's still room to put a wire. The 22K resistor, which is this one right there, that resistor is kipped over funny because I need room to put the screw in down there. After we get the screw in, we can set that back up right. There's a lot of underboard connections. If we try to look at our diagram here, you'll see, we have underboard connections, this to this to this, and we have this comes, we have things that are coming out, and like this resistor has to connect to this capacitor, and this resistor connects to this capacitor, and this resistor connects to this capacitor, etc., down the line. So for those, if it made sense, I extended the leads on the back of the board to make the connection. Remember, there is going to be a backer board put on this when it goes into the amp, so there is going to be a backer board, so that's fine. And if it didn't make sense, or it was a long run that would go over something else, we used a piece of wire. So what we're going to want to do with our meter is, if you have a continuity beep meter, which I do, I don't have it sitting here on this bench, but we'll want to go with our diagram and just check our work, put this to a very low ohms reading. Let's see here, let's see if we can get all that in frame. I guess so. And then we'll check a few things. So, for example, the 0.33 should be contiguous to the 1 meg, and of course I cover up my meter so I can't see it, should be contiguous to the 1 meg resistor over here, and there we go, not 4/10 of an ohm point, not, so that is contiguous. A continuity meter, of course, would beep. And then we can come up and check some of our resistors, like we have the 470 to the 1 meg. These probes stink. The 470 to the 1 meg, come on, play ball with me here. Why am I not getting a reading? There we go. Now I got a reading. So that's again 0. And then the 2 1 megs over here should be connected. I think I need to clean the tip of this one probe. Yep. Okay, so there's 0 ohms there, so that connection is good. And then the tip of this should be connected to the tip of the 22. There we go, 4/10 of an ohm. So that one's good. This 100K here needs to go to the 22 cap over there. And it does. And then the 82K goes to this 22 cap. So that looks good. I think we're okay on our underboard connections. All of them that I see here are okay. I'm going to check this again, like we have things like from the middle of the diode to the end of this resistor should be contiguous, and it is. And from these two 40 mic capacitors are contiguous, where, and you can feel free to walk the circuit and make sure you don't have any shorts too. These should not be contiguous, but these should. Okay? So again, I'm just looking through my diagram. This should be contiguous to the next cap on the line. Why am I seeing a... yeah, there we go. I need to clean the one probe here. I think it's got some crud on it. And then we're just going to check a few others that should not be contiguous and make sure that they are not. Make sure I didn't put any unnecessary shorts in our system. I'm going to test a little bit more, but I think I'm good. When we come back, the next thing I'm intending to do, and I'm going to try to use as many different color wires as I can to make designations easier. We have a wire that needs to come from between these two resistors and come out to the tube. From here out to a tube. From here out to a tube. From here out to a tube. These are going to be on the end tips of the board, so it's no big deal to put those on the outside of the board. But for some of these, like coming from these 270K resistors up here, we're going to want to run wires underneath the board so it doesn't look like a complete and total mess. So that's my next plan, to run the wires from the top of the board down underneath. We're going to make them a little longer than they need to be and kind of roll them up a little bit, and we're going to try to use a different color each way here to try to make it easier to designate what goes where when we come down the pipe the rest of the way. Okay, so again, my clock has reminded me that it is late enough that we should call it another evening. Didn't have as much time today to work on the project as we have other days. Yesterday we had a little bit longer, but I think we've accomplished quite a bit. We've got this board assembled, and we've got the wires there. The holes that are still open here are going to have wires that are going to go to the front. I have thought about how we're going to do a grounding scheme, since I did not include a brass plate in this kit, and I think I've made that decision. I'm going to guess that this layout diagram was for an older variant, but essentially the point of the brass plate is it just provides one place to ground everything to. Everything that has a big triangle here would be a ground. which this is attached to the chassis, so we just need to attach anything with a ground to the chassis. Now attaching these things to the chassis is going to be a little bit of a pain in the rear, but I think we can make a ground bus. We have some fairly rigid wire here, and I think that'll work real well. So I'll show you how to do that. The wires that go to the top part of the board that need to go to the tubes are all in place, and I tried to use a wide range of colors so I could easily tell them apart, and I should be able to, you know, look at them tomorrow or whenever we get to this, and go through and work with that. Down here are our power rails. These are going to be going to the main power tubes and to the output transformer. So this is going to be output transformer power. This one I believe goes to screens, and then from here over this is like preamp. Yeah, this is preamp. It comes out to here, which feeds the preamp. So again, I can compare this to the schematic as need be, but these layout diagrams have been really thoroughly checked, so I generally just work off the layout diagram. So we'll come up with a creative ground bus tomorrow, and I think we'll be able to drop our board into our amplifier. Cool. Okay, so welcome to day 3. We're going to be putting the board inside of the chassis, I believe. And right now I'm looking at the tube sockets down here, and I'm looking for any wires that need to go underneath the board that, you know, maybe go all the way through. Anything that goes all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. Underneath the board there are none. Everything does have an attachment to the board, so we're good there. And prior to dropping the board in, I wanted to make sure that anything that could be soldered on the tubes, with the exception of doing like extra leads, but anything I didn't do on the tubes yet that would be easier to do prior to installing the board. And there's a jumper there on that pin right on that valve number 2 from 3 to 8. There's a jumper there, so we put that in. We soldered the one side and then kind of made a connection. That's the bright yellow wire doing the jump there. It's soldered on pin 3 but not on pin 8 yet, because there's going to be a lead coming off of pin 8 to go up there. So now we're going to do our ground bus. Now initially on their picture, and in a lot of times they give you it says brass plate. They give you a brass plate that you can solder and ground everything to, kind of like a Fender amp. That's not every amp tech's favorite way to do it, and this layout diagram is looks like it's to a slightly different chassis array than this. So we're going to do a bus, and our bus is going to be made up essentially of a piece of ordinary copper bare wire. This is some 14 gauge wire that I salvaged out of some Romex. There's some Romex wall wire for your 120 volt home, and we're going to use this, and I'll be showing you how we're going to do that. What we're going to do is first we're going to solder the tip of it down there to that post down there. Okay, so I've got it soldered to the lug, and then I put a little bit of shrink wrap tube on there, which is completely not mandatory, and it's sticking out of the top of my amplifier like an antenna. We're going to shorten it up and clean it up after a little bit, but we're going to make sure our wires here are where they need to go, meaning that our red and white power wires from our power transformer are significantly out of the way so they won't be getting into anything problematic, and that our red wire from our output transformer is going to sneak out of the bottom of the board when we put the board in. So let's screw the board in. So the board is in the amp now, and the one screw is underneath that 22 K, and the other screw is down here under the cap. The standoffs are plastic, insulated plastic, so I don't have to worry so much about them. Yep. So now we're going to put the jacks and pots on the front. We have master volume, tone, volume, and the input. Put them in their respective spots. Okay, so master volume pot is in, tone pot is in, input jack not yet, primarily just because I want to get to those resistors down there. But we do have our first dilemma. The volume on-off pot that has to go here isn't going to go there on account of that big fat resistor sitting right in its way. And we need to creatively extend that lead or something to move that resistor over. And we've got some fairly, rigid, stiff wire. So I'm going to come up with a way so I can like scoot that resistor, like maybe so it's over here or the front of it. It can be at an angle, it doesn't matter. I just need to make room to get that pot in there. Okay, so got that done. That's a pretty stiff leg, and that scoots that over enough to get that pot in there. Boy, I really don't love that, but I'm not sure where else I can creatively do, because there's like no place to put pretty terminal strips or nothing. So we just extended it with a stiff lead there and shrink wrapped it up so it can't ground out on anything, and the back lead is still the original. So working up top in the corner here, after I install the input jack, there are certain places I wouldn't really be able to get to. And the same goes for the volume. That volume pot's going to come out to here. So all of the things that are the taps for the master volume were going to be underneath. I wouldn't be able to get to them. So I did wire up the master volumes, both sides of it. This third one goes to ground. So I did this according to the diagram. As you can see on the diagram, we've got, they're going from here and here to there, and then the other two, we got 2 to the resistors and 2 to the capacitors. And in reality, we've got 2 to the resistors hiding under here, and 2 to the capacitors over here. So it's a longer run than is pictured. But I think that gives us enough leeway, and then we have one of the ground or earth connections, and then I've got my connections that need to go to the volume pot, the primary volume pot, and the input. So we've got those in place. Now I should be able to put these pots in. So a bit more progress has been made. I have been able to install the on-off / volume pot there, and I've got that wired up to the appropriate points. If we look on our diagram, the one lug goes down to the 0.047 microfarad cap. The middle lead goes to that cap, which is the 0.033. And from there you have one that jumps over to the middle of the tone knob. That's our blue wire there. You can at least see the blue on the ends there. And then you jump the capacitor, which is 500 puffs, from the middle of the volume pot over to the, it's going to be my right of the tone. And because I had to go across the third lead here of the volume pot, I opted to put a little bit of insulation on those when we did the jump over. Also, the red and white power leads for the power transformer, this side anyway, there was no way if I waited any longer I would be able to reach down there with a soldering iron to get that corner. That red lead would go to this part of the diode array, and then the other lead goes to the other part of the diode array. Again, isn't it nice on the diagram they show you, a couple inches of space, when in reality you got a board that butts right up against the end of, I shouldn't say butts up to it, but you got like what, on a good day with the wind blowing right, a centimeter space. So yeah, I think we're doing okay. We still got a lot of wiring to do on the tubes. I'm going to put in my input jack and we're going to build the ground bus here on the front. Sometimes I get carried away and then I forget to film what I was doing. As you can see, I took our 14 gauge wire here and I've soldered it to the bodies of every one of our potentiometers. I had to come above the switch there, and this is actually the switch part of the input jack, which is also being put to ground. And of course this wire from before, if you remember, it's actually down there bolted down to the chassis. So this provides a chassis ground to everything that needs them. So you see the blue wire coming off of there. The blue wire represents that, you know, coming from that 1 meg ohm resistor. See the little red arrow? That means put it to ground. We have our 2.2 meg resistor, 2.2K resistor. We put that to ground. We have the capacitor here, the 40 microfarad capacitor. We put that to ground, and then we have this 40 microfarad capacitor here we have to put to ground. So it's just a matter of coming off the board and running to the ground bus. This is actually the sleeve that needs to be run to ground too. We can just use a short little wire or a snipped lead. You'll see. Okay, so we've been soldering things to our bus bar, and there's still more things to do. But we have this 40 microfarad cap soldered to our bus bar. That 40 microfarad cap right there. Can you see the blue wire? You can at least see the silver there. There it is. We got those coming up from there to the bus bar. And then over here we have the 22K resistor up there, the 1 meg resistor up there. We still have more things to connect to ground. Although it's already technically grounded, we're going to connect that lead. We're just going to tie it to that, which is at ground. On our volume pot we have to connect that leg to ground. On our tone pot we have to take this capacitor, go from tone pot to capacitor to ground. And then on our master volume we have to ground both of those. So the bus bar sometimes can be easier to work with than the brass plate. Despite the bus bar being stiff and in the way, and I know somebody's getting the Beavis and Butthead chuckle. Soldering to the brass plate's going to be behind the pot, so you're going to be really back there on the wall, and it's a brass plate, so it's going to wick your heat away a lot. And so then you have to have a monstrous plumbing-sized soldering iron. I don't think there's room for a plumbing-sized soldering iron in this thing. There's barely enough room for the soldering iron I've got. You know, to get down there and to get on the end of those underneath, I mean, to get those blue wires in there for the ground circuit, you were working in tight spaces, you know? So, yeah, I mean, soldering that power lead, I don't think you can even see that. Camera can't. I mean, you know, we're already soldering in tight spaces, so I'm sort of glad we're doing the bus bar. Initially, I was kind of going, why didn't I get the grounding plane? I probably would have gone this route anyway, so we're doing okay. So we got a few more things to tie to our bus bar, and then we got a whole boatload of things to tie down to our tubes down here. And we've got some floating flying leads. We'll have to decipher what's what. And we got to connect tubes to power. We got to connect our output transformer. There's that lead. We didn't lose it. And it's going to connect down there to the big hot B plus crazy hot power. And somebody wants to talk to me on the phone. Okay, so that pretty much completes the front end. We've got that's the switch and the ring to the ground bus. We've got, you know, we already did these earlier. This end of the volume switch is to ground, so that one where you see the left rung of volume to ground, and switch and ring to ground. So there's the switch and ring. There's the left leg of the volume pot. Come to the tone pot. The left leg goes through that capacitor to ground, so the capacitor is tied onto the grounding bus after going through that leg. And then on the master volume, both of those two legs need to go to ground, so that's what we did. And I've got my 4 grounding points that are listed here on the circuit board. So at this point I think we're remaining to do the wires to the tubes underneath. This is pretty tight work. I'm doing a lot of fiddling with the pliers and praying I don't scorch anything with the soldering iron when I'm under there. Okay, so this tube's all wired up and everything looks good. Well, as good as it can look. Sometimes the insulation from these type of cloth wires kind of gets shreddy and kind of messy on there. But the soldering's actually pretty tight, and things are good. So that's what we have. So this tube right there. We have pin 1 goes to pin 7, and the 1K resistor from pin 1 goes to pin 8, which goes to that capacitor. That's the yellow wire. And then we have pin number 6 going to the 82 and 100K resistors. That would be the red wire. And we have pin number 3 going underneath the board. That's the red wire there, going underneath the board, and it goes all the way up to the pinnacle where these input resistors are up there. And I double checked that for continuity like 3 times. And let's see, and then pin 3 goes to that cathode bypass assembly over there, the resistor in the cap over there, so that would be the blue wire. So this tube's good. Now we move on to that one. Okay, so the second 12AX7 is good. We have pin 1 going to that resistor capacitor, so the 82K, which is tied to the 0.22. That would be the red wire going actually to where the 0.22 is, which is connected to the 82K resistor underneath the board. Pin 2 is going all the way up underneath the board to the left 1 meg ohm resistor. So that one in the center of your screen, and that's going under there via the yellow wire. Pin 3 is hopped over to pin 8 via that yellow jumper wire there, and then pin 8 goes to that 470 ohm resistor way up there, so it's the one just to the right of the, or just to the left of the yellow capacitor, so it's kind of the fat one there. Pin 6 goes to the 0.02 capacitor, which is just the one that's just barely peeking out from underneath the big fat resistor. That's connected with the blue wire. Actually, both these are blue wires, and then so that's right. I'm sorry, I'm thinking. And then pin 7 goes to the 0.01 microfarad, which is, we can see peeking out over there. Its connection is down under there and that is pin 7. Connects to both that 0.01 or 0.1 cap there, and also up to the 1 meg resistor there. So it connects to the resistor just to the right of the yellow cap as well. So I've checked all my continuity. This one looks good. Now we're going to move on down to the next tube socket here, that EL34 valve number 3. Okay, so in completing the connections for this tube, I pretty much connected the rest of the stuff anyway. So let's just look. Pin 1, the red wire, also has that 470 ohm resistor that jumps over to 9. So pin 1 goes from the power rail B between those two resistors to there. So the red wire between those resistors to pin 1, and then the resistor jumps over to pin 8, which goes all the way up to the 270 up at the top, which goes out to the master volume. Pin 8 is, I don't know if we can see it, it's kind of a cream colored wire back there. Pin 7 is the blue wire from the transformer. Or I'm sorry, hold on. I got it all mixed up. Hold on, let's back up. Pin 1, I was correct. We go to the between the resistors. That's right. Right, pin 1 between the resistors. I did this right, I just told you wrong. 470 goes to pin 9. I can't, reading the diagram through the viewfinder sucks. Goes to pin 9, and then from pin 9 it goes to the pin 9 of the other tube. So we have that going to pin 9 over here, and then there is a yellow wire that is traveling to pin 9 of the other tube. Pin 8 actually starts at pin 8 is the one that goes up to the 270 ohm resistor way up there. Comes down on the cream wire to pin 8 through a 1.5K resistor. That's the smaller resistor there. Over to pin 2. Okay. Pin 3 is the cathodes. That goes up to the assembly here of our big fat giant huge resistor capacitor here underneath there. Then it goes to pin 3 here, and then also to pin 3 over here as shown. So big fat cathode resistor, pin 3, pin 3. Okay. And then pin 7 goes to the transformer. We knew that. Okay, so while I was at it, since I already had pretty much everything already going to the other one over there anyway, we have pin 8 is the other 270K ohm. I used the light blue wire from that. So we have the light blue wire coming down from the top of the board, going to pin 8, and then going over through the 1.5K resistor to pin 2. Pin 1 is open. Pin 7 is the brown lead from the transformer. And pin 6 is open. 5 and 4 are the filaments. So pins 1 and 6 on this tube are open. And they are, again, kind of hard to see at these funky angles. But I I've been walking around this with a meter. I'm trying to double check. As these sockets are real close together, you got to watch your solder blobs. You got to watch that your wires aren't crossed. Okay, last few steps. We need to hook up the red transformer lead from our output transformer to the B+, which is this one right there. Okay, so I have the red lead from the transformer right, and that's the big high volt. There it is. There's the output transformer lead to the A rail of the power supply, and of course the B rail is the one feeding the power tubes on pin 9. See, so if we look, there's the B rail. It goes to pin 1, which isn't connected to the 170 ohm resistor, to 9 to 9. So let's just follow that around. See, there's the B rail on the schematic, and there's that 470 ohm resistor right there on the rail. That's B, and then B is to pin 9 and pin 9. So it does check out with the schematic. I know these layouts are kind of weird to read. The only things I really have left to do is hook up the power switch, and then we can kick the tires on this thing. Heck, cool. So the power switch, which is up there, that goes from one rail, is the brown lead of the transformer on the, the C color chart 1 or whatever. That's the one lead. One lead goes to it, and then the other lead is going to come back from the fuse. Okay, so I got the power switch wired in. One leg goes to the transformer, the other leg goes to the fuse. That should complete our amplifier. So now I guess we just need to turn it on and see if it works. I'm in the mood to live dangerously. I took the little clippies off the power tubes. They're sitting right here. I can put those back on in a minute. But let's leave the tubes out of it. Snap it on and see if anything explodes, and we'll just check some voltages down here. Okay, kids, well, I'll admit I did cheat way back before we even put the circuit board in. I just did turn this on to make sure that I had the filaments wired good. But that's way back then. So here we go. Power on. That's exciting. The light turned on. And nothing else happened. Nothing exploded. Okay, that's uneventful. I don't see any smoke rising out of it. Could that mean I actually did something right? Okay. Well, I suppose we should check some voltages here. Let's check some voltages. DC. My crap little meter only goes up to 500 volts. Probably read some overages. Put our negative lead on the chassis over here. And let's see what our primary B+ over here is. $415 volts. Let's see what the B leg is. $412 volts. And the C leg, I think, comes over to here. 407 volts. Okay, so those are our three legs. We have all of those voltages. Our filament voltages. Those are going to be AC. I gotta come over to AC. 3.2, and the other one should probably also be 3.2. To be halves, right? Let's check them over here. It's easier to check them on this power tube. Yeah, looks fine. Okay, so I suppose we should just put some tubes in it and see if they explode. Did I record that while I was walking around like a loony bin? Maybe I did. Anyway, we're in low light now, so we can see how these look. Looking for red plating. And the EL84s have nice bright filaments. Very strong, easy to see filaments. But the only red I see is actually a reflection off of the light bulb. Looking good so far. Time to get the speaker. Okay, so the only hum I hear, we have the sacrificial speaker, it's plugged in, it's down there on the floor. The only hum I hear is the fluorescent lights. I can turn the master volume up to maximum, and we'll turn our volume up to maximum, and by that point I can hear kind of a whooshing noise. See if the tone knob works. Yeah, tone knob takes us underwater and changes the whooshing sound. So that's way too loud, I think. Let's take our master back a ways. Take our lead a little bit. Plug in a test lead here. And let's see, tune a little volume. What's funny is I can hear the weird little noisy things dancing around in the cone. There's some dirt and dust on the speaker cone, and I can hear that dancing and fluttering around. But beyond that, I hear no real anomalies with the amplifier. It seems just fine. So that's what I want to see. And oh, I figure, well, it's still on the bench. We'll put a guitar in it and see what it does, huh? Okay, so we've got our PV guitar here, and okay, we were playing and then our sound just disappeared while I was playing. What the heck? What happened? Alright, time to investigate. Okay, it turns out it was shmoo in the pot. So we'll put a little bit of master volume on that little bit. Our gain is low. So this should be a clean sound. And of course it's going to sound like rubbish with a guitar speaker on the floor, which isn't really even a guitar speaker. That seems to be fine. Let's turn our gain up to the gills here. Good grief, that's loud. So let's turn our master down so we can tolerate it. I actually like the way this breaks up, at least through this speaker. Yeah. Okay, so this isn't a time for me to showcase my crappy guitar skills. I think it's time to put the rest of the knobs on this and prepare its cabinet, because as far as I can tell, it's perfectly healthy, and I like the way this little thing grinds so far. Okay, so our test run was an amazing success. Now it has knobs, and the reflection on the chrome shows everyone that I'm wearing jeans. Well, at least I'm not naked, right? See, now I can start telling jokes because I'm not concentrating. I don't have to concentrate. The thing worked. It worked the first time. I didn't have to go back and re-troubleshoot a million times because I was troubleshooting the whole time I was doing it. I was going through every single connection and trying to be meticulous. So, that doesn't mean it's not going to explode in a few minutes. The power transformer didn't get hot. The output transformer didn't get hot. I ran this for, a while. But I'm pretty sure she's pretty healthy. I put the tube covers back on the 12AXs. And so we're going to set our head aside here, or our chassis, our electronicals. We're going to put those aside, and then we'll pull out the cabinet and prep the speaker. So I flipped the cabinet on its face for the sake of viewer-friendly visuals. This is the speaker wire. It's a stranded cloth-covered vintage wire, and you can see there's plenty of it. Probably give me twice as much as I need, so I'm going to trim these in half. If I can with my shoddy, crappy wire cutters, good grief. Okay. There we go, so set that surplus aside, and since we opted to use the 1/4 inch rather than the RCA, we have a 1/4 inch plug here, and essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to solder here. We'll do the white as the common or the negative, and then we're going to twist it up and solder the 1/4 inch jack on it. And with that wire all twisted up like that, it should be about the right length, I think, because when we twist this, it is going to get a little shorter. Now, for those of you who enjoy seeing the obligatory solder smoke, I feel like I disappointed you this video by not giving you enough of it. So here's a little bit of solder smoke to help you enjoy your day. There we go. We got one more lead here. This one up, and I checked, and this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to solder to this paint. We're about to find out. If we can't, then we'll feel a little silly, and we'll just have to scrape it off. Come on, soldering iron, do your business. Yeah, soldering iron just seems to be eating the paint alive. So that's cool. Yep, got two good connections. Slide our shrink wrap tubes down there because this wire, you can't really heat it up with the lighter and get it to like melt. It doesn't behave like typical nylon does. So we'll put a little shrink wrap on there, that way it won't fray. Gotta make it look nice, right? So then we're going to twist this up and put a nitric connector on the other, yeah, it actually is a nitric, but a 1/4 inch connector on the other end. And if you don't know how to do a 1/4 inch connector, I have a video on that too. Okay, there's some bad camera angles for you boys and girls. At this point, I think all there is really to do is enjoy it and clean that tone pot, because it seems to have a weird anomaly, but we'll give you some clean tones, the master at half, and the volume or gain just kind of on. Yeah, I'm already liking this. And the main reason we like it is because it's little and it'll probably let us drive the bejesus out of it. So let's just turn the volume up a lot. Turn the master down a lot. There we go. That's why we came. That's why we came to this one, to get a little amp that could hurt somebody, right? So we have the master volume nice and low, and we have the main drive nice and high. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to bring the tone up, bring a little bit more treble back into the system since we're drowning it out with that master volume. And this tone pot right in this general vicinity is causing things to crap out on me. And I got to figure out why. It's got like a weird little spot. It needs a little cleaner. I'm going to spray that. Oh yeah, that thing's going to rip. But the volume's, you know, I got to try to keep it low for the sake of this goofy. Tone pot, and it doesn't rear its head until I actually hit a chord, and then it likes to fart out, like right now. So we'll find it, we'll fix it, but it's probably just that. I hit the master down to duly squat. This tone pot probably needs to just be worked. As you know, anything that's been sitting on the shelf for, you know, eons probably gets a spot. Before, when I was turning it through this range, I was getting a tick. That tick's gone. It probably just needed a chance to circulate the goo around it. But the amp itself is working good. The only thing questionable is maybe the tone pot. This is great. This is a nice small amp. I can control the volume and I can get plenty of grind, and it's small. This is going to be great to take to the shows that we play at. And you guys probably don't really care to hear my crappy guitar playing, but since it's Christmas, we'll play you the first verse of a Christmas song. What is it? Bend up your stocking hole. This lump ain't sauce, green beans, and muffins. You be the turkey and I'm the stuffings. For Christmas. So, there you go. You got to watch it build the amp from top to bottom. Everything on it works. That tone pot's a little snotty, and when I went to turn it this time, I knocked the master volume to 0, so that was my own fault. But this amp's got a lot of crunch, a lot of attitude. It just is a lot of fun. Really, really neat. I like the way it roars for a tiny amp, which is rare. Most tiny amps sound like little tiny amps unless you're running them, you know, gut wrench out. And this one sounds like it is kind of running gut wrench out when it's not. And that's awesome. Nice. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a great day.